As we're about to finish the Torah, we read about the passing of Moshe Rabbeinu. And when it comes to the passing of Moshe Rabbeinu, the Torah tells us, "Vayifchu b'nei Yisrael as Moshe be'arvis me'av shleishim yaim." The sons of Israel, the men of the Jewish people, they cried for 30 days over Moshe's passing. Says Rashi on this pasuk, right at the end of Torah, that the Torah stresses that by Moshe's passing, only the Bnei Yisrael cried for 30 days, only the men. But notice how the Torah tells us when Aaron HaKohen, Moshe Rabbeinu's brother, passed away, the Torah tells us, "Vayifchu es kol beis Yisrael," the entire household of the Yidden cried for Aaron. Rashi tells us this was to show Aaron HaKohen's Avos Yisrael. Moshe Rabbeinu's brother, Aaron HaKohen, was famously known for being an Oyev Shalom v'Reidiv Shalom. He would go around and make peace amongst the entire Bnei Yisrael. And therefore, since Aaron had a special stress on Avos Yisrael, more people felt emotionally affected by his loss than when Moshe Rabbeinu passed away. But asks the Rebbe, there are many problems with this. Why at the end of the Torah, when we're about to finish, we end off the Torah talking about how great Moshe Rabbeinu is? Why then, at the very moment he passes away, do we stress that his Avos Yisrael wasn't as great as Aaron's? That seems like quite the interesting thing to stress at the very end of Moshe's life. And who says Moshe didn't have Avos Yisrael? This was the leader that put his life on the line time and time again for the Jews. If not for Moshe Rabbeinu, the Jews would have not made it out of Mitzrayim. The Jews wouldn't have made it out of the sin of the Chet HaEgel, the golden calf. They wouldn't have made it out of the spies with the Meraglim. They certainly would have made it past Kairach. But yet his Avos Yisrael was not great enough to get a special mention at the time of his passing. In fact, the opposite. When he passes away, let's talk about how great Aaron HaKohen's Avos Yisrael was. It just doesn't seem right to put this right at the end of the Torah. But explains the Rebbe a fascinating answer. The Rebbe explains, first off, this is not to take away from any Avos Yisrael Moshe had. We know Moshe was the faithful shepherd who cared for every single Jew no matter what. But Moshe and Aaron had two very different paths. How to affect the Jews, how to inspire them, how to make them feel holy. Moshe's job was always bringing things down. Hashem said something to him, it was super high, he brought it down so the Jews could understand it. He would always explain things, make things relatable. He was the channel from the godly energy on the top to bring it down to the Yidden on the bottom. And that's why every single Jew was able to come and learn from Moshe Rabbeinu, because that's what his Avodah was. Aaron HaKohen was a little bit different. As a Kohen, his whole job was to bring the Karbonis upwards, to take the Yidden and elevate it up, to inspire them to be better on their own right. It was in fact the very opposite of Avodah that Moshe had. Moshe was focused on bringing the godliness to the Jews, and Aaron HaKohen was more inspired to bring the Jews to godliness. And explains the Rebbe that only when Moshe Rabbeinu passed away, when he had his histalkos, his spiritual ascent upwards, was he able to fully appreciate not just his Avodah, but Aaron's Avodah as well. When Moshe Rabbeinu stepped out of his own body, he realized that there were other good paths as well. They weren't his Avodah, they weren't his path, but there were others as well. And that's when Moshe Rabbeinu was truly able to appreciate what Aaron HaKohen did, when he was able to see the advantage from his side as well. And what Moshe Rabbeinu does next is absolutely fascinating, because in his final moments in this world, where Moshe Rabbeinu with Ruach HaKodesh is writing the Torah, he is writing the psukim about his own death, he makes sure to highlight someone else's Avodah. He makes sure to highlight someone else. Even at the moments before he passes away, he is still not focused on himself. The final word will be going to say something nice about someone else. And therefore, at the very end of the Torah, there is a slight hint to the benefit of Aaron HaKohen's Avodah, because that is the extent of Moshe's Avos Yisrael. Always looking for someone else, always looking to highlight someone else, even at the very moments before his death. And the lesson for us is very clear, because at the end of the Torah we need to take a message that culminates in the finishing of the Torah, but also highlights every aspect of what the Torah is meant to teach us. And what better mitzvah to take on other than Avos Yisrael? We must learn from Moshe the extent one must go to help another Yid, to highlight his good deeds over showing yourself how you're better. By doing that, by always going out to help another Yid, by always going out to show how he is just as special as you are, and so is every single Jew. Hopefully, before the end of Yom Tov, we will be zeicha to the coming of Mashiach. May he come speedily in our days. Wishing you a good Yom Tov.